So, with the holiday season of October going on right now, a lot of people love to talk about the things that spooked them when they were young. Something about watching something and suddenly getting freaked and creeped out by something that appears in it can be memorable in so many ways as a young kid, especially when you're at a young age and watching something seemingly innocent. So, to talk about these kind of horrors witnessed, I figured the best way to dive into this topic is to discuss a series that had some of those kind of sequences in more ways than one, with that seemingly innocent show having that dark edge being none other than Sesame Street. Now I know what you're thinking. What, this little show about puppets scared you when you were a little kid? How much of a wimp do you have to be? Well, here's the thing, I'm not necessarily alone on this. Yes, I love Sesame Street, and it had plenty of lovable characters and moments that still stick with me to this day. Though, when I was young and didn't experience a whole lot of horror stuff till I was older, there were some possibly spooky things that appeared every so often in that show that did kinda spook me a little bit. I say I'm not alone because that kind of stuff actually got one episode banned. You might have heard of the recent whereabouts of this lost Sesame Street episode that appeared online recently. The episode dealt with the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz visiting Sesame Street. And the episode was banned because apparently this was deemed too scary for kids. Which, watching the episode now,
Don't give it up!
No, they say no. No.
Fudge!
yeah, it's really not all that scary to an adult. But let's also think about this. If you're young and haven't experienced much, sometimes things that are unfamiliar and have a seemingly threatening element to it can be quite scary as a kid. It made me think of other moments on this show that also freaked me out in some way, because I can name quite a few, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. Talking about the moments from Sesame Street that scared me when I was young. Not really ranked in any particular order, I just took 5 moments / elements that appeared in Sesame Street over the years that made me felt a little scared. Now with all of that out of the way, let's go down the street of my childhood as I'm here to discuss the scary moments that were on Sesame Street.
Frazzle, you are not fuzzy and blue. You are fuzzy and orange.
When you think of a Sesame Street monster, what do you tend to think of? Someone like Grover, Elmo, Cookie Monster. These are all monsters, sure, but they always had a more welcoming and cutesy appearance to them. They're made to be friendly, and even despite being monsters, I never was able to find these characters scary in the slightest when I was 3 years old. And then you have this guy right here. This is Frazzle, a Sesame Street monster who made a number of different appearances, and this guy kind of freaked me out when I was younger. Unlike every other Sesame Street monster, this character personality and appearance was a lot different. He didn't have any cutesy outward appearance like the others, and instead looked more, well, what any 3-year-old child's interpretation of a monster would actually look like. For one thing, they made him look like the devil with these big pointy horns, along with a bushy black unibrow, making him look really mad. Not only that, they also, for whatever reason, gave him teeth, and not just any teeth, probably the sharpest and pointiest teeth you would ever see on a Sesame Street monster. His design is one thing, but to top this character being a bit scary for a young child is that he doesn't even really talk. Instead, his way of communication is just making all these gargling monster-like noises. And the fact he acts more like a monster compared to every other Sesame Street monster is pretty intimidating. Now, despite what I said about this character and how he scared me a little when I was a wee lad, I totally see what they're trying to do here. You see, Frazzle may act and look more like a threatening monster compared to the other monsters you would see on the show, but in actuality, he is more or less the same kind of friendly monster that would appear on Sesame Street. He still shows a lot of insecurities and just wants to be in on the fun. His more scary looking appearance is there to serve a purpose. It's there to show kids that looks can be deceiving, and just because someone may look scary in appearance doesn't automatically make them a threat. There could still be a very kind character underneath an uncommon appearance or mannerism. Frazzle shows that anyone regardless of appearance do have the same sort of feelings as anyone else has. And rather than being shunned for it, he shows that people should learn to get along and be understanding despite their looks. I totally respect that. And later on, I think they did a decent job of showcasing Frazzle's more humanity side. Even with that in mind though, that didn't stop 3-year-old Pineda Phoenix from being a little scared by this rascal. I mean, considering that barely any other monster on Sesame Street comes close to looking like him, it's odd to see such a more threatening looking and acting monster on this show as juxtaposition. Sure, later on they show his more humane side, but what about back then? They still showed and kind of treated him like this angry, more monstrous creature. And even despite some great intentions with what they were doing, the fact that he has sharp teeth, gargles aggressively instead of talking, and being the literal definition of a monster didn't stop me from being a little scared by him. I don't really see Frazzle that much nowadays on Sesame Street. My theory is that for as good of intention of a character he is, maybe the point wasn't clear enough for the kids watching the show who might have been scared by him. I know I didn't see it clear enough. Bottom line, as a kid, I loved the monsters on Sesame Street for not being scary. But Frazzle, unfortunately, didn't meet those standards. I hope you can forgive me, Frazzle, from my wimpy days as a kid.
I'm glad you liked it, Simon. It's got good rhythm.
While Sesame Street was of course known for its traditional Jim Henson-like puppets, not enough people talk about the non-puppet segments on that show that appealed to kids. Sesame Street was also an opportunity for various artists to create their own little animated and artistic segments to help educate kids in their own way. For the most part, it seemed to work well, and even paved the way for future things, as this was partially how Hey Arnold came to be. Literally, no joke. And this was also the early work of older animators at future studios, including Bud Luckey of Pixar. Though, there was one person who contributed one of the most interesting types of segments, and that person being William Wegman. Who is that name? Well, he's responsible for this.
And her big book of nursery rhymes. Welcome.
Yeah, William Wegman was one of the stranger talents to create content for Sesame Street, as his work doesn't so much deal with puppets or animation, but instead his work deals with filming and photographing dogs, Weimaraners in particulars. All fine and dandy, except the catch here is that he films them not so much as dogs, but more as these people who have real hands and human bodies, but they still have a dog head. Honestly, kinda weird, and I can totally see people being weirdly freaked out by these designs. Yet I was more so fascinated by these characters than I was necessarily scared by them per se. This is such a weird way of making videos with dogs that I can't help but be intrigued by it, even if it did lead to me being a bit scared by these dogs every so often, cause there was that. Because of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mother Goose video they had back then. This was the main Sesame Street VHS I had, featuring mostly these dogs, and it was weird yet fascinating as expected, though it had a few tales in this that kind of creeped me out with the way the Wegman dogs are seen here. Fortunately, there's only 3 I want to talk about that do fit into that category, so let's start with Little Miss Muffet. I think everyone knows this tale. Little girl sits on a stool eating porridge till a spider comes around to scare her. Seems simple enough, but look at how they portray this tale closer to when the spider shows up.
Along came what are curds?
How did they make that dog look like they are afraid for their life? I'm genuinely concerned for that dog, cause he looks mortified. It gets even worse when the real threat comes and it's
Spider, who sat down beside him and frightened Miss Muffet away.
Okay, it's lame as shit. But that tension building up to this spider was actually done pretty effectively. William Wegman was good at somehow making these dogs look expressive through his filming. I think there's also evidence in that kind of stuff scaring me in their version of the Queen of Hearts tart's tale. Starts simple enough with the Queen of Hearts making the tarts, but then the Knave of Hearts comes into frame.
The Knave of Hearts. He saw the tarts.
How did they make that dog look so evil? I don't think the ominous choir in the background helps either. It's only one shot where this dog looks threatening, but look at him! This dog looks like he's about to literally murder someone with that face. It's really intimidating. Though I think the one who takes the award for scariest moment in this entire video is the retelling of Little Girl with a Curl. This time, it's just a dog in a wig in front of a blank background. Doesn't seem too bad. I mean, the music's very calming and everything.
When she was good, she was very, very good.
Until...
And when she was bad... she was horrid.
What the fuck? I mean... making the dog's eyes glow so suddenly to make it look so evil with that creepy music in the background? This was honestly terrifying as a kid seeing this one segment. I know it's a few seconds, but Christ, this looks creepy. Even despite all these scary moments, I still kinda weirdly have a fondness for the Wegman dogs. For as odd as these segments were, they were at least very unique and different enough to make me really appreciate them. Minus the psychological scars to have come from these segments.
Wow, China! Just like in the cartoons!
For the next couple of moments, they're actually going to be centered around a few Sesame Street specials instead of a particular segment or character, as there were a decent amount of specials featuring these characters that have a set focus on a certain topic in regarding to education. For the first special we're going to talk about, we're going to travel overseas with the special Big Bird in China. The title of this is pretty self-explanatory, as the special deals with Big Bird going on a trip to China with his dog Barkley. No, not that Barkley. Why is he going to China? Well, it was established in the beginning of this special that Big Bird was interested in this scroll he sees at this Chinese shop, where he's captivated by this bird on the picture known as the Phoenix. Big Bird wanting to have the crossover of the century, with the American bird meeting the Chinese bird, and him wanting to learn more about Chinese culture in general, leads him to make the decision to go to China. How is a 6-year-old bird able to travel and afford to drop everything in his life to go on what I can only imagine to be an incredibly expensive trip to another country? Who cares? We have a song talking about how fun it is to go to China.
Hurry, Barkley!
Let's pack our bags. Let's call the station. Let's grab a cab, make a reservation for China.
This is the sequence that has the most Sesame Street characters involved. It's a fun-filled song with numerous small appearances from my favorites, even with some weirdly questionable lyrics.
I'm not sure I want to get stuck there.
If I were you, I wouldn't press my luck there.
I hear they'll even press a duck there.
What?
In China!
Though, it's the only real time you see most of these characters in this special, as the special mostly focuses on just Big Bird. I mean, there's a brief appearance of the two-headed monster, and a micro subplot of Oscar and Telly digging their way to China, but they're so insignificant to the plot that there's arguably not much of a point to them here. You also get a lot of sections in this special of different Chinese performances and places to give you an idea of what China is like, for those who are probably learning more about the country. It makes sense, as Big Bird's sightseeing is an essential element to the plot, as the scroll Big Bird has discussing the Phoenix has a bunch of pictures of various things that are actually in China. In order to meet the Phoenix, Big Bird has to visit these places before he finds the Phoenix. Of course, not very easy when Big Bird doesn't speak Chinese, and of course, things get lost in translation.
Oh, excuse me, sir. My friend and I are looking for a wall.
对不起，您的话我听不懂，很抱歉。
Oh, thanks anyway.
That is, until he comes across a little Chinese girl named Zhao Fu. who speaks English and wants to help Big Bird on their trip to find the Phoenix. And honestly, a little side note, if you haven't heard anything regarding the story of this little girl in this, I'll let you know that it is actually really sweet regarding the production of this film. Apparently, she didn't know a single word of English prior to this special, and this is her only acting gig. But Carol Spinney was able to help her recite lines that were in English because the two formed a very sweet bond with one another. In the documentary about Carol Spinney, they bring up this friendship bond, and without spoiling anything, it makes the production of this all the more worth it. I know I'm talking all this sweet talk, but where does the scary part come in? I mean, this is about creepy Sesame Street moments, isn't it? Well, there's a catch to Big Bird's scavenger hunt, as every time he visits one of these places, he receives a clue regarding the whereabouts of the Phoenix from someone known as the Monkey King.
And in each place, a monkey will give you a clue.
A monkey?
The Monkey King is an ancient Chinese legend, so it makes sense for him to encounter this character in this special. So, with that in mind, how are they going to portray the Monkey King here? I mean, it's probably some fun little puppet or something like that.
Oh. Wah! Ah!
No, that's the Monkey King. Not a puppet or actual monkey, but instead a creepy looking dude with creepy makeup on. Now I know this makes sense for him to be like this in the Chinese culture because oftentimes they do have people in this kind of makeup to represent their ancient legends. That makes a ton of sense as a near 30-year-old adult, but from the perspective of 5-year-old me, who didn't know anything about Chinese culture at all I see is some really creepy dude who moves around really strangely. It also doesn't help that the Monkey King is known for being a trickster in the culture, and they make him do that with a bunch of different scenes where he's messing around with Big Bird. So, as a kid, he never came across as helpful. The fact that he keeps jumping around in and out of frame through jump cuts with cymbal sounds and just likes to fuck around with Big Bird makes this kind of scary to a little kid. At least that's what I thought. And it also didn't help that I couldn't understand a single word that this guy was saying. It had to be translated for me within the film, which I can't really focus on because I'm too creeped out by this dude.
寻找疯狂的人，悄悄地从他们中间走过去了。
Though it does lead to this kind of funny moment that's not in later releases of this film.
Wait! Don't you want your last clue so you can find the Phoenix?
No, I've got to find Barkley. The Phoenix can wait.
12 seconds later.
He speaks American.
Even despite the loss in translation, I feel like this character would be kind of scary to even a child who grew up with more Chinese culture than someone like me. Not really much else to say in terms of moments that were creeped out in this particular special. Really the only other thing that comes to mind is the scene where Barkley comes across these two Chinese tigers and then chaos! Outside of that, this is a pretty decent special with Big Bird and does a good job teaching kids about Chinese culture and the country of China. It is mostly just Big Bird seeing the sights, but it's still pretty charming and a fun time for little kids, minus the psychological scars the Monkey King might bring you. But enough about China. We gotta go to Weeboo Central for the next topic I'm gonna be discussing regarding Sesame Street.
Pack your things. We're heading for Tokyo.
Sweet! We're going on vacation!
Another major special I watched a lot as a kid regarding Sesame Street. Big Bird in Japan serves as kind of a sequel to Big Bird in China. This is another production teaching kids about how life is like in a different country. Except this time, Big Bird learns how to be an otaku. The strange thing about this special in comparison to the other one is that it's a little shorter, and that's mainly because there's not as much of a setup to this story compared to Big Bird in China. There's no real reason for why Big Bird is in Japan, and no other Sesame Street characters this time outside of him and Barkley. The special starts out with them on a tour of Japan, starting with Tokyo. How does he have the money to do this without any adult supervision? I don't know. Someone at PBS has been giving him these opportunities, though probably should have helped more because Big Bird wants to explore more of Japan than what the tour guide offers. He explores a little bit of Tokyo and thus ends up making the obvious joke being someone who doesn't understand Japanese.
Hi.
Ohio.
Ohio?
Hi.
Funny, you don't sound like you're from Ohio.
Yeah, pretty basic joke about the Japanese language, but consider this. This is a special meant for younger viewers learning about Japan. So, them making a joke like this makes sense. Chances are this is probably the first time they're learning about how to say good morning in Japanese. I know this is how I learned what Ohio was in Japanese.
I was beginning to think there was nobody left in Cleveland.
Not only is Big Bird lost in translation, but he ends up getting lost.
Wait till we tell the gang on the bus. The bus!
This is why you don't stray too away from your group in a foreign country, kids. Though unsurprisingly, Big Bird is sad about missing home and not sure how to get back. He does the only thing a Sesame Street character would do in a situation like this, sing about it.
'Cause I'm homesick, homesick, homesick. If I ever get well, I'll never leave home again.
All seems lost for Big Bird at this moment. Until...
Do you know the Japanese word for homesick?
What? No.
This nice lady who speaks English shows up offering to help Big Bird as she just so happens to be going to Kyoto, as it's the destination that Big Bird and Barkley have to be in order to fly home to Sesame Street. So there's a little bit of stakes here, but I think it should all be good because Big Bird has the chance of going home and still see the sights of Japan with someone to help out. Everything should be great from here on out.
We're gonna go home! We're gonna go to Kyoto! Oh, Barkley, that's you were so worried.
さよなら、東京。
Okay, that was oddly dramatic at a very sudden and random moment. Never mind that. We gotta go to Kyoto and sing a song about it.
We're off to Kyoto and not to Buffalo. No rain or sleet or snow will keep us from our goal.
Basically, the special for the most part plays out very similarly to the China special, as it's mostly about Big Bird learning about different customs, languages, and landmarks of Japan, all in the very charming Sesame Street way, leading to a pretty enjoyable special. Though, while all this is happening, the lady helping Big Bird seems to be very fascinated with the moon, as every night she looks up into the sky staring at it. She even has a song later on that's really touching and sweet.
Moon, moon, hanging in the trees, so pretty and white. Moon, moon, softer than a breeze in the dark, starry night.
So, do we end up learning about her whole deal and why she's acting so dramatic in these sequences? Well, we do, as later on, Big Bird ends up getting roped into going to school with a bunch of Japanese kids. They never explain how, but it does lead to Big Bird watching a play. And yes, this does tie into the story at hand. The play Big Bird watches is a retelling of this ancient Japanese folk tale called The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which is a tale you might be a little familiar with. If you ever see the Studio Ghibli film, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, then you know this story well, as the tale being showcased here is the exact legend that film from Ghibli is based on. Yes, I learned about this tale from Big Bird first, and not from Iso Takakata. If you don't know what the tale is all about, a bamboo cutter ends up finding a little girl inside a bamboo tree, and she's revealed to be the Bamboo Princess. The original tale focuses on her being set to marry to a few heirs, only to refuse because she's destined to go to her eventual home on the moon. Now, if you're paying attention, notice the parallels with the moon and the lady Big Bird is with. Moon.
I still don't know your name.
Kaguya Hime.
That's a beautiful name.
Yeah, it's revealed later on that the lady that's helping Big Bird is actually the Bamboo Princess herself, Kaguya Hime. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect the crossover of Studio Ghibli and the Jim Henson Company is actually canon in the Sesame Street universe. But I think it's a neat way of teaching kids about the original tale. There's even a sequence near the end where Kaguya gets taken away to the moon, and it's done in a very eerie sort of way. It was always kind of unsettling as a kid, yet it was still a well done sequence that gives off this very strange yet melancholic tone. So that's probably the scary moment you think I'm referring to, right? Actually, no. There's one small moment in this special that I always thought was scary as a kid. During Big Bird's sightseeings of Japan, he visits its old temple that's essentially showcasing numerous statues standing guard. And it's... What the fuck? I know these are just a bunch of statues, but their horrifying faces, the threatening music, and the fact that they're all located in this very dark area where we just have to see their faces is kind of traumatizing for someone really young like myself. God, these statues are creepy. We gotta get out of here. Anyway, the special is pretty solid overall, and I like how they managed to showcase some neat aspects of Japan to a younger audience. It was definitely a special I loved when I was little for that reason, minus the scary statues and all. I think we need to go somewhere that doesn't have as many creepy statues. Maybe not what I had in mind.
Some days I feel just like that. Oh.
And that leads us to the final special I wanted to talk about here. Don't Eat the Picture was actually my favorite of these kind of specials from the show, partially because it's not solely Big Bird focused compared to the other two. He's still the main character here, but this time, you got a lot more moments with the iconic Sesame Street Muppets like Grover, Cookie Monster, and Oscar the Grouch, to name a few. Which is good, considering these were the characters I gravitated towards the most throughout the series. Definitely one of the most memorable, as the plot of this special centers around the Sesame Street cast going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. However, their trip seems to be short-lived, as the museum is just about to close.
Sorry, folks, time to go home now. Picture's got to get some shut-eye.
Oh, we hardly had a chance to see anything.
Well, what do you expect with New York traffic being so bad? The gang is all about to leave, except for Big Bird, who doesn't want to leave so he can meet up with Snuffy. The adults don't believe him, as this was during the period where everyone thought Snuffy was an imaginary friend, because he never shows up while the adults were around with Big Bird. Though I blame that on Snuffy for not making his presence known by these fools to help out Big Bird. So I say, screw Snuffy. But because he's his best friend, Big Bird goes off to find him. But this leads to the rest of the Sesame Street gang to go on the search for him. But here's where the creepy part comes in.
It shouldn't be too hard to find him, should it, Oscar?
Nah. I mean, it's already pretty eerie with them searching for the bird in this big museum. But then... yeah, this kind of stuff happens throughout the entire special. And as a kid, this always felt unsettling. I know it doesn't seem like much, because it's just random shots of clocks dinging. But the loud noises and how nothing else happens during these segments give me a sense of foreboding terror that gave me a strong sense that it's leading up to something scary. While this creeped me out as a kid, I kind of appreciate this now. As when I got older, I started to really appreciate when movies, especially in the horror genre, have this unsettling feel in a very subtle way. Sure, it's not the scariest thing, but the fact that it appears throughout the special made it all the more effective in that feeling. Though the special still has its fun moments, as everyone in the Sesame Street gang ends up getting locked in the museum, so they have to spend the night to find Big Bird. So we get a lot of different moments dealing with the Sesame Street cast, reacting to various different artworks throughout history. Even Oscar the Grouch finds some art that he appreciates because of how damaged they are, so much that he has to sing about it.
Broken and beautiful, fractured and rare, missing pieces that used to be there.
Which, I gotta say, the songs in this special are actually pretty good. The score is actually really well done, and sounds a lot bigger for something as simple as this television special, and the songs are filled with a lot of memorable verses. Not only does this include Oscar's song, but Grover has a nice little song about becoming friends with a knight, and Cookie Monster sings about his starvation.
But no, me know the rule. Picture exciting, but not for biting. Don't need a picture. Don't need a picture.
Yeah, this is where the title of the special comes into play. Cookie Monster, being the hungry Muppet he is, gets tempted to eat many of the paintings that are related to food, but because he can't eat art, he just has to suffer and sing about how he can't eat the pictures.
Please don't eat the pictures. Oh, this is going to be a long night.
Meanwhile, during all of this, Big Bird eventually finds Snuffy, and then he suddenly encounters something else.
Please, Osiris, help me find the answer to this question.
A little Egyptian boy appears who has been cursed for thousands of years to be trapped in this museum. He goes by Prince Sahu, and apparently in order to escape from this curse, he needs to answer a riddle for this demon that was given to him. And that's just in order for a judgment test to be made by the Lord of the Underworld, Oshiris. He has to judge on whether he's worthy enough to go to the afterlife, or in this case, the stars, to be reunited with his parents, by determining if his heart is lighter than a feather. Big Bird and Snuffy agree to help since they don't really have anything better to do, and they like helping out little kids in need. Throughout the special, the clocks you see that give this eerie vibe is meant to add tension, as it's to signify how much closer it is to midnight when the demon comes to ask the riddle for Sahu. Not only that, but Big Bird and the gang try to figure out what exactly is the answer they were given for Sahu. That riddle being,
where does today meet yesterday?
Where does today meet yesterday?
well, considering that Big Bird and Snuffy are in the present, aka today, in 80s terms at least, and Sahu is from the past, along with all these other ancient artifacts showcased in the museum, they come to the conclusion that the answer is,
we're from today, and you're from yesterday, and we met in a museum.
So that means they can encounter that demon, right? Yeah. Well, yeah. And those clocks are really starting to make this feel creepy.
I have a feeling it's midnight.
It's question time.
It's the demon.
Ah! Giant, creepy, old person, and I'm sorry, but this was kind of terrifying as a young child. It's partially because I don't really anticipating anything remotely nightmare related on this lovable street of Sesame. Fortunately, he doesn't appear on screen for too long. But just this weird headless character that's an ancient spirit with dark makeup is still creepy enough for 3-year-old me that I was a little scared by him. But he's not too much of a threat as they answer the riddle and they have to encounter Oshiris with his judgment challenge. There's some creepy vibes to Oshiris, which makes sense being the lord of the underworld, but not as creepy as the demon prior to his appearance, though he is a lot more of a jerk compared to the demon.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
Not fair!
Well, he's just a little boy, and he's been alone for 4,000 years with no one to love him. So, of course his heart is heavy.
Yeah, the bird has a great point. Stop being a jerkwad, you old fart! Fortunately, Sahu passes the test and gets reunited with his parents, making a nice ending to what was kind of a creepy special at some parts. Oh yeah, Sahu also has an invisible cat, which also is a little unsettling. Either way, despite this special having some scares for younger me, I still really enjoyed it. It was still my favorite Sesame Street characters and a really neat special that taught me all about different kinds of art from the past. If you haven't watched this, or even some of the other specials I talked about here, give them a watch if you're a fan of Sesame Street, or if you have kids of your own and want to educate them in a fun manner. Just don't be too surprised if they get a little scared with some of the stuff I mentioned in this video. Talking about things that scared us in the past is always a fun talking point, especially when it comes to children's media. So, my question for you is, what were some of the things that appeared on Sesame Street that scared you in any sort of way? So, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys again next time. Happy October!